Hello everyone, we welcome you to the day 3 of DMCC TD5 Acceleration Program. For the first 2 days, we discussed about the regulatory landscape around crypto and what are the areas that a crypto project needs to consider in order to be legally compliant. In this session, we have with us Baiba Broka, member of the Governing Council at Unitroid International Institute for the Unification of Private Law, and the legal advisor and business development manager at Grand Stream. The topic for today's discussion is legal and corporate structuring. I am sure that this session would be highly valuable in regards to the recent regulatory landscape and its implication for crypto project. Baiba, can you please take us forward from here?
Okay, thank you and welcome everyone. So it's really great pleasure for me, an opportunity to have this ability to interact with some of the legal aspects. And however, always people think that everything that relates to law, legal, it's boring, it's too complicated, and nobody can understand except ourselves. So I think that I've managed being the industry and being also like a law professor for quite a long time. I think that I managed to find a way how can I try to explain very complicated legal concepts in a way that other people that except lawyers can also understand. But also, this is quite difficult because because there is technology and law which are trying to be married together, and both are very specific industry. And please do not hesitate, do not be shy to ask questions. If you think maybe it's stupid, there's no stupid questions. If there's something either in a chat box or whatever later, just ask the questions. I will be happy to try to explain. If something is too difficult, also just let me know, we will go through. Today's main idea is really to introduce with an overview what anyone who decides to start a business within the blockchain ecosystem, with all the technologies, and we can talk also separately Web3 or Metaverse, whatever. So we have to be aware of particular rules, like in everything, so even if we play a chess, we have to know the rules, and not to violate and to be compliant and not to have additional struggles and problems in our everyday. So that's why, of course, today we will touch some of these like main points. It's not enough to describe everything, but this is the first introductory course, and hopefully so we can continue. Now I will switch to presentation. So let me do it like so that I can go. Yes. So as we can see, so I will take myself out. So as I was introduced, my name is Baiba Broka. Yes, in my everyday life, I am practicing legal and financial advice. And I'm advising absolutely fresh new ideas from the very beginning, and being together with the projects, trying to build, execute, implement the idea. I'm working with existing businesses already. And also I was introduced as the member of the governing council of the International Intergovernmental Organization UNIDROIT. And this is an institute which facilitates and adopts international legal instruments like conventions and model laws in order to facilitate international business. And lately, so we are working also on a very interesting document that will be adopted very soon in May. The document is Principles on Digital Assets and Private Law. And this document will be like a guideline, like a model law for each country's national legislator, parliaments, how to adopt and to set up a regulatory framework within each separate country. So this is a little bit about me. And yes, and here in UAE, I have my own consultancy company called Grand Stream. services for the companies which want to start business within the ecosystem of blockchain. Start to go through, in my opinion, 10 very important points, things that every virtual asset service provider, VASP, should know. So from the moment when you have a great idea, from probably at the beginning from the technical point of view, so since you are decided, probably those who are listening to this presentation, you have a business idea that you want to implement and using some kind of discoveries and something unique using technology. And but of course, it's not enough. In order to be successful, we have to also look around and see what other requirements we have to follow. And of course, a regulatory framework is very important. And therefore, the first point I want to mention is this: to acknowledge and to study and research legislative regime. So what does it mean? First of all, we have to answer a question to ourselves. What kind of business we want to start, what kind of service or product we want to offer in the market. And then we have to answer where we want to start the business. And with the question where, it relates to the evaluation of the particular jurisdiction where you want to incorporate, register your company, which will be this driver of your business. And it is very important. It's not easy task. It's very important because also even today, if we look to the map of the world, we will see that still the regulation, specific regulation that relates to virtual asset service providers is very fragmented. There are countries where we can see very detailed, very sophisticated rules and regulations in place already, which really precisely requires what the virtual asset service provider has to do, what kind of licenses you have to obtain, how reporting should be done. There is a very specific and regulated supervisory procedures in place. But still, there are also quite many, and majority of the countries are those who are still do not have special rules and laws in place, what relates to digital assets, what relates to the blockchain industry and ecosystem. If we look to those countries, I also sometimes we see that, in media, you will hear, oh, it's very easy to work in that country because there's no rules and regulations. No, nothing is regulated. And this is actually wrong statement because we are not living in vacuum of rules and regulations in none of the countries. Even if there is not specific law what regulates the kind of business, whatever what you are doing. For example, I always mention everything what relates to anti-money laundering. It is obligatory to follow to any business in any country. So coming back to this first point, so once we decide to start a business, we have to look at the particular legislative regime, evaluate, so whether this want to establish my entity, what is the tax regime, what is the reporting regime, what are the requirements I have to follow. And secondly, also, we always have to evaluate which will be our market, where we will target our consumers, provide our services as well. So important planning, execution of your idea and implementation to evaluate are going to commit. And of course, in different countries, there are different systems. There could be central bank who has a supervisory authority. There could be special established institutions, for example, like in Dubai, VARA, very specifically designated and established institution, which will supervise only those businesses which are related to virtual asset service providers. Third point is definition of virtual asset service provider. So actually, this is very important. So what exactly means to be virtual some definitions already widely accepted by many countries. Also, in different international organizations have provided their understanding of this definition, like everything what relates to anti-money laundering, FATF definition. So why it is important? It is important because still there's a common principles, but in some of the countries there are still some differences within this definition, including some more businesses under this definition or excluding some of the activities which normally maybe we think are directly related to the virtual asset service provider, but for some of one or another reason they are excluded from this specific licensing regime, for example. The first point is activities that not covered by the virtual asset service provider regulations. This is exactly what I mentioned. In each of the country, we can find that there's specific designation of some of the activities which do not fall under the requirement to token issuance. In some jurisdictions, token issuance as a business activity is not under the definition of virtual asset service provider. For example, I'm mentioning also British Virgin Islands, where in the 1st of February of 2023, this year, they adopted new law of virtual asset service providers. And there is also mentioned that there is many activities which are considered to be virtual asset service provider, but there are exemptions, for example, token issuance. And again, if you look to if our business is related also to the issuance of tokens, then we have to additionally legally evaluate what kind of token we are going to issue, whether it will be utility token, then it is exempted as per this specific regulation. Or if our business is related and will include issuance of the security token, then of course we have to follow specific regulations which regulate securities. And each of the country, what relates to the regulation of the capital market, there are specific laws that also what relates to issuance, registration, and putting on this commercial stream securities. The fifth point is registration. So we also have to look in which country, maybe there is not licensing requirement, but there is registration requirement. As we see, including and defining also that there could be voluntary registration. So it means that business itself can decide that we want to be registered. We want that supervisor knows that our business is also one or another way somehow related to the digital asset ecosystem. For example, business what I'm doing, I'm providing, I'm not really like classically virtual asset service provider, but I do provide my services, consultancy, my knowledge, advices to the businesses which are conducting, who fall under this regulation of under the definition of the virtual asset service provider. And so it means that my law office or my company as the consultancy company can voluntarily also inform and register my business under the specific regime, informing that I'm connected to the ecosystem of technologies of blockchain. Sixth point is application for registration. This is also a very important step that every business idea have to go through and have to be prepared, because in each of the jurisdiction also there are specific requirements, what kind of documents, what kind of special forms you have to submit to the regulatory authority in order to obtain the license. And it is very important to do on a timely base, because to draft and to prepare all these policies is also, it's a lot of time. It's a really time-consuming activity. And it requires also involvement of the very specific experts, like when you have to provide business plan. Of course, you have to talk with the financial people who can make, budgeting, and who can make financial projections properly. But relates to technical requirements, you have to speak with the developers and software engineers who can design all the technical architecture schemes and explanations, how your platform will be working, how you will ensure cybersecurity, how you will commit regularly software audits. So there is a very specific documents which you have to be aware in advance in order to have a time, and also in order to have resources, and also right experts who can provide those documents as it is needed in each of the jurisdiction. Seventh point is functionaries. So it's all goes back to the human resources and people which you have to hire in your company in order to be able to receive particular license. And usually in these documents, they use description fit person. So as per each country's regulations, so the understanding or the criteria to be a fit person can be different. If we look to the Dubai and Baiba regulations, if you want to obtain a license of the crypto exchange in Dubai, so you have to have as an employee in your exchange a compliance officer, which has at least 5 years of experience already, perfect reputation, and other requirements. So this understanding or definition or content of the fit person also can be with some nuances and differences in different countries. For some of the positions, for some of the services, some countries allow to have outsourcing agreements. In some countries, no. So it's again, when we evaluating which jurisdiction we want to go, these are questions we have to a little bit think about, because also to be employee or to be a consultant, it's also, everything goes back to the funds. It goes back also to the question, how much do we need to pay for that? 8th point is ongoing requirements. When we plan to start the business, so also we have to plan how we have to maintain business, what kind of reporting, what kind of records we have to keep, how we have to provide this reporting. Do we need to have auditor? How regularly? What kind of auditors we have to involve? If financial auditors, technical auditors. So this maintenance process is very important. 9th point is application fees. Also, it's very important money-wise from financial point of view to understand how much would it cost to obtain the license and to maintain the license. And 10 points, thing what I mentioned is penalties or sanctions, consequences, fines. So also, once we decide to start a business, we have to evaluate what happens if something goes wrong, or also we have to acknowledge legal consequences for carrying on virtual asset services without being registered under the respectful jurisdiction, or we haven't received a license, or we did not review and we did not prolong the license. So also, these fines usually can be quite important and quite impressive. So if we look to the ones that are included in Dubai and Baiba regulations, so it's a huge money fines you should pay. And also in some occasions, even imprisonment could be like a sanction for the committing business of virtual asset service provider without a license. So these were these 10 points which you have to evaluate every time, each of you, if you are planning or evaluating whether you have to follow all these 10 steps and get the license, or maybe your business activity is somehow exemption. And to understand whether you need or not, so we have to go to the basics. It's a definition of virtual asset service provider. What does it mean? And the mostly adopted definition in most of the countries is the one which is defined by the Financial Action Task Force. It's a main international organization which issues and supervises guidelines of anti-money laundering and terrorism financing. And as you see, these are these criteria that a virtual asset service provider is this business who provides as a business a virtual asset service and is registered to conduct one or more of the following activities or operations for or on behalf of another person. And those activities which fall under this virtual asset service provider is exchange between virtual assets and fiat currencies, exchange between one or more forms of virtual assets, transfer of virtual assets, where the transfer relates to the conducting a transaction on behalf of another person that moves a virtual asset from one virtual asset address or account to another. Safekeeping or administration of virtual assets or instruments enabling control over virtual assets, participation in and provision of financial services related to an issuer's offer or sale of a virtual asset, or perform such other activity or operation as may be specified as the Virtual Asset Service Provider Act or may be prescribed by regulations. And also, so a person, not only business, but also individual, a person engaged in any of the following activities or operations for or on behalf of another person will be deemed to be carrying on a virtual asset service if the person is hosting wallets or maintaining custody or control over another person's virtual asset, wallet, or private key. So here we can talk about all kinds of different custody solutions, like self-custody solutions, custody on centralized platforms, or also some of the new initiatives, decentralized custody services. Providing financial services relating to the issuance, offer, or sale of virtual assets, providing kiosks such as automatic teller machines, Bitcoin teller machines, or vending machines for the purpose of facilitating virtual assets activities through electronic terminals to enable the owner or operator of the kiosk to actively facilitate the exchange of virtual assets for fiat currencies or other virtual assets. And I want to stop on this small point that in many countries, everything what relates to these vending machines or these specific Bitcoin or digital asset teller machines, in many countries still this is exemption from the traditional understanding of virtual asset service providers. Now, like if you look to the Europe, in many of the countries, you can start business of vending machines of the digital assets without any license for time being. When the new regulation MiCA will come into force, of course, situation will be different. And the last activity is if a person is engaging in any other activity that under the guidelines of FATF constitutes the carrying on of the business of providing virtual asset service or issuing virtual assets or being involved in virtual asset activity. So, and then it's very important also to look which are the activities, business activities and services, which are quite many within the blockchain technological ecosystem, which do not fall under the definition of virtual asset service provider, and therefore you don't need to spend so much time, and there's still you can quite easily start your business because the registration and licensing requirements are not so strict or do not exist at all. So the VASP Act is not intended to regulate the technology that underlies virtual assets or virtual asset service provider activities and helpfully set out a range of services which are not subject to the acts regulating virtual asset service provider. And what includes there? So these are activities related to providing ancillary infrastructure to allow another person to offer a service such as cloud data storage provider or integrity service provider responsible for verifying the accuracy of signatures. So everything actually basically everything what relates to the infrastructure in technological solutions which are created and which are used by actual service providers, virtual asset service provider. Usually these infrastructure creation activities are not falling under the definition of the virtual asset service provider. But the final product or the final service, the platform which is using the software or this technological tool, this final service provider have to be registered or licensed. Providing service as a software developer or provider of unhosted wallets whose function is only to develop or sell software or hardware, solely creating or selling a software application or virtual asset platform, providing ancillary services or products to virtual asset network, including the provision of services like hardware, wallet manufacturer, or provider of unhosted wallets, to the extent that such services do not extend to engaging in or actively facilitating as a business any of those services for or on behalf of another person. Also, those activities solely engaging in the operation of a virtual asset network without engaging or facilitating any of the activities or operations of virtual asset service provider, and also providing closed loop items that are non-transferable, non-exchangeable, and which cannot be used for payment or investment purposes. And finally, accepting virtual assets as a payment for good or services, such as the acceptance of virtual asset by merchant when effecting the purchase of goods. Also, if, for example, if the restaurant is using crypto payment gateway in order to facilitate and to provide the facility and additional option for customers to pay for the services in crypto, in digital assets, of course, restaurant itself is not virtual asset service provider because they are just using this one of the technical possibility to receive payments. But the company which is providing this crypto payment gateway solution, that company usually could be the subject on the registration. So, and then as I told you, so usually token issuance is very special exemption from the virtual asset service provider. But however, I told it could be some limitations if we talk about and if we are considering that within our business, we will issue security token. Then very specific rules we have to follow what relates to the investor securities market and investment agreements that we have to follow. Which are today, if we look, which are the, I would say that quite popular jurisdictions where to incorporate companies and when to start business. So I put the British Virgin Islands as the first one because they just adopted also a new law. The Virtual Asset Service Provider Act in 2022, they adopted in late December, but it came into force the 1st February of 2023. And British Virgin Islands is quite popular jurisdiction, not only for virtual asset service provider incorporation, but also for incorporation of companies which are token issuing companies, ICO companies. I think this is one of the most popular jurisdiction. Cayman Islands as well. However, I should tell you now, so if your business idea is connected with a quite sophisticated payment solutions, financial services, where you have to follow rules of KYC, KYB, and KYT is the transaction screening. Of course, we have to take in consideration also that the Cayman Islands is still in a gray list of FATF, so because of the anti-money laundering rules, and which are not in the highest standards as per international requirements. And this could make also difficult, sometimes, some difficulties how to, after that, if you have entity registered in Caymans and it relates to the payment solutions that, cooperate with the traditional banks in different countries could be quite challenging. So still we have to wait. Maybe Cayman will do their homework, and in June of 2023, they will be removed from the gray list, but as per time being, so it could be some difficulties connected to that. If you look to the European Union, still Estonia is one of the jurisdictions where the full range of services within the virtual asset service provider are available. You can have a license. Lithuania, there is no licensing. It is authorization of the business. So it means still you have to submit a lot of documents to the designated government institution, which has a duty to supervise businesses involving digital assets. Malta is one of the first countries within the European Union, maybe even I would say first country, which adopted a very special law what relates to cryptocurrencies. Liechtenstein is also very popular jurisdiction. It's, if we compare, from the money perspective, how much you have to pay for incorporation of company, then Liechtenstein's minus is that it's a quite maybe a comparatively expensive if we compare to the other jurisdictions, but very respectful and very good connected. If you open a company in Liechtenstein, which will be doing business within the virtual asset service provider ecosystem, of course, you've always been guaranteed that you will have bank account also in Liechtenstein, because the cooperation between government entities and banks are quite well established in Liechtenstein. Germany, they have also very sophisticated regime. Also, France and Italy, they have not licensing, but also registration requirements. Switzerland is also one of the countries which is very respectful and still very popular for some kind of businesses and startups within the blockchain ecosystem. United Arab Emirates, as we know, so most probably that the reasons why you are also here in UAE, because we see all the government is supporting and try to be, and they have this ambition and goal to be the leaders in the world that relates to the support of the technologies. And that's why we see that also there is an internal competition between the ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Market, between DMCC, where you are located, between the DIFC and also Dubai Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. So we see even within the small country, each small these jurisdictions try to compete between each other, which will have the most favorable regime, attract the more and more businesses. United States of America, it depends from state to state also. In a federal level, still there's a big fight, which will be the main government institution to having this supervisory duty. Either it will be Security Exchange Commission or it will be Commodities Commission. But of course, there are some states which are in very favorable in order to support everything that relates to digital assets. Like I should mention Wyoming. Wyoming is one of the states where you can also even register DAO as a limited liability company. So for some of the, as I told also, if you think which market you want to enter, of course, United States of America, it's also very much depends on the state you want to go. Seychelles is quite a popular place where to incorporate companies. Mauritius, Singapore, Hong Kong, of course, there are also many other countries. I just mentioned some of them, maybe more popular and jurisdictions where you can evaluate. So about the corporate structure and governance, of course, this is also very important that corporate structure is a must when you are making, and for example, ICO startup on the blockchain. If you want to issue tokens, of course, you have to know that there should be also entity in place and corporate governance also in a place. The blockchain provides a unique environment for companies to do business, and this has a significant impact on how the company is structured. And currently, the types of structures we see include that it could be like limited liability company or LTDs, which create a base protocol or technology coupled with separate businesses. And if we look to the how to structure, usually also because when we discuss the definition of virtual asset service provider, I also mentioned what are exemptions. And sometimes in order to divide the risks for the companies and business idea, so usually also there is a willingness to have a separate entities. One entity is establishing corporate only to provide and to develop this technological part of the business platform, for example, which relate everything to the technology. So it's a separate entity, and as we saw, it's always, mostly always will fall under the exemption of the necessity to obtain a license. Then we say that usually these ideas within the blockchain also involves the willingness to issue your own token. So for token issuance, also as a fundraising tool, token issuance companies always is advisable also to have as a separate entity. So, and this is also when we plan how to organize our business idea. So it's also very good to evaluate liability and risks which are connected to the performance and operations of the technology, and also the completely different goals and completely different risks are involved then when we talk about issuance of the tokens, which actually is a fundraising tool. The third point also, blockchain-based ecosystems coupled with LLCs that create a profitable transaction loop. So we also have to think, how we will combine these created entities, what will be intercompany contract agreements between the companies, how we will organize money flow, because of course, we are saying we have one business idea, but sometimes to execute in reality this one business idea, we come up with a solution or decisions that we have to create 3 separate entities, maybe in 3 different jurisdictions. And only because, as I told, to divide and to mitigate the risks involved with each of the particular sphere we want to regulate. Then we can have also possibility to have these non-registered distributed organizations. And also very specific mention is how to structure DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. So since the blockchain is one of the blockchain's features is this decentralization, de-intermediation, so that it's full democracy and community itself can pass a decision. Of course, this very specific, unique form of corporate governance as decentralized autonomous organizations are becoming more and more popular, but at the same time, they involve also a lot of the legal uncertainty and legal challenges that have to be also addressed. And I want to mention also, if your business is involving decentralized autonomous organization solution as a corporate governance structure, so there is already 2 jurisdictions in the world where you can register decentralized autonomous organization in a form of limited liability company. For example, in United States of America, Wyoming state, and other jurisdiction is the Marshall Islands, where you can register also DAO as a company, as a non-profit organization, as a non-profit company. And this is very good solution already, and probably some of the other jurisdictions also are trying to evaluate the possibility to have a specific legal structure formed for decentralized autonomous organizations. So this, of course, this feature, the anonymity and decentralized nature of the blockchain heavily impacts also how governance is handled. Traditional governance and corporate structure systems actually are not appropriate, and they do not work, and sometimes they are not even possible to execute on ideas on the blockchain. But regardless of the current regulations, you may need to face you have to face that there are certain principles of corporate structures that you'll need to account for. And these are vital to sound business operation and will help establish your startup as a trustworthy and fully compliant entity. And those important principles are, first of all, transparency and integrity, security, accountability, sustainability of operations, and ability to fulfill promises and obligations given to your customers. So these are like these typical classic concepts that you have to keep in mind when you try to set up everyday corporate structure, either using DAO, so involving community and validators of your products, or you try to still go to the traditional companies and where you have a general assembly of shareholders, where you have executive board, maybe you can have supervisory board, So there is also for each of the service, you have to evaluate which will be the most appropriate structure. For crypto businesses, so whether you are launching security token or utility token, ICO, or DEX or whatever, there are different ways of fundraising tools we can use. Exchange, a cryptocurrency fund, a Bitcoin mining company, or simply accepting cryptocurrencies as payment method, you have to ensure that you are compliant with rules and regulations in place in particular. So for cryptocurrency exchanges, you always have to check whether you have to be licensed, how to get a bank account, how to organize custody in an exchange, how to find these right fit persons, and how to follow all the AML policy requirements which are needed. If your business is related to STO or ICO, of course, you also have to check regulatory compliance. You have to take also in account tax considerations, licensing, registration. So in this will also give you and directions which jurisdiction you want to go. Tax consideration is very important. Sometimes it's not about how easy, maybe we can set up the company and we can be happy that there's no requirements to have a specific license, but sometimes we can go in other way if we see that there's very strict or very high tax we have to pay only because we are dealing with digital assets. Cryptocurrency funds also, they have to look at where to incorporate fund, how to get the license, how the fund management, how the fund administration should be organized. Mining companies, incorporation of the companies, minimization of operational costs is very important, as we see in some of the countries, since everything that relates to the mining, it's a very high energy consuming business, and therefore, as we see, for example, in Europe, in north part of the Europe, Scandinavia, Norway, they have extra tax for the companies which want to mine Bitcoin, only because the energy consumption, so they have this environmental tax very high. Crypto payments. Also, we have to, if you want to provide our business will be within the scope of crypto payments, we also have to think where is the best regime to be incorporated, whether we need licenses or no, whether we have to be approved by central bank to being like a payment and remittance business provider. Also, how to get bank account, how we will do invoicing and everything. For lending platforms or all other like decentralized finance service platforms, also we have to first of all decide which way we want to go, centralized or decentralized platform. And this will also then will give you the next questions. If it decentralized, shall we fall under the definition of the virtual asset service provider and we need to be licensed or registered? If we decentralize, of course, for decentralized platforms, there's still I could say vacuum of the laws in general, specific laws, but of course, you know, it's again your business ethics and goals you want to reach. If you want to build like long-lasting business and you want to gain trust of your consumers and customers, you have to also ensure that you will follow particular business ethics and values, that you will try to be as a compliant, that you will follow the AML general principles, that you will not allow illegal money to enter the business. So this also, even as I'm saying, even sometimes there is no specific rules in place, we also have to follow these unwritten legal principles, unwritten ethical rules, because it's all about how we will build trust in front of our customers, that they choose our services in this competition of different companies providing different similar services. Gaming also is very specific field of the blockchain businesses. It also could be very specific licensing requirements, what kind of gaming. If it's a gaming and gambling, it's a completely different story, but also it requires a lot of the legal studies and research in order to find the proper solution. As I mentioned, whatever business you are doing, so anti-money laundering is one of the topics you have to take it very seriously. Even if there is no specific rules or laws in place in some of the countries, still, so the Financial Action Task Force as an organization, they have issued guidelines and they keep adopting and changing and amending those guidelines, following what happens in the market. And whatever business you are doing, and also, as I tell, ethically, it is very, it's a proper way to acknowledge and follow those rules, which relates of the know your customer, know your business, and know your transactions. So decentralized autonomous organization, I put this like comparison. As you see in this triangle, I put a scheme from the one of the articles. I like it very much, and I like this scheme. You know, the traditional understanding how we manage company, how we structure their CEO, then comes top management, maybe different departments with the directors. Then it's a mid-level management, then it's non-management, and then this lower non-management is like traditional employees and of the company. This is how the pyramid goes and how it's organized as per rules and regulations arising from the commercial codes in most of the countries. And in other side, you see how it looks if we look to the decentralized, if we look to decentralized autonomous organizations, there's no centralized legal entity, no employment contracts. And unlike traditional companies, the DAOs is comprised of the groups of people who work in so-called tribes according to fully transparent rules. And these rules are written in the software in a smart contract and incentivized by tokens. So it's completely different way how on blockchain today we involve our community. We ask them to be active and responsible, and ask them to be responsible for the success of the business we are doing together. So this is complete, as I say, if you talk about democracy and transparency of management, and probably decentralized autonomous organizations is the most democratic way how to manage my own interests and interests of the community. So I tried to be really very fast. So our time is almost at the end. So thank you for your attention. So I don't know what is the procedure. So right now, do we have time for also some questions?
Sure. Yeah, please, like, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put it forward for Baiba, and I think like she will be happy to answer all your doubts.
Hi, Baiba.
Hi.
Hi. It was a good presentation. Thank you.
You're
My question is, we are a NFT service provider and
okay.
developing 4 different kind of tools. And we have launched recently the beta version. So do we need to follow any guidelines or regulation required to register like our MVP model right now? We are under the, that only waitlist user only have access, not the public access. So is there any legal requirement to open that kind of, that MVP model?
Again, so we start from the very beginning. So NFTs is one part of NFTs is also under the definition taxonomy of digital asset. NFT still falls under the one of the types of the digital assets. Therefore, in the countries, it depends in which country you want to go, in which country, as we saw, you would like to incorporate your company, and then you will follow what is exactly your business activity, whether it's more technological solution, but you are giving how to mint and how to create NFT, or it's already like a direct commercial stream with the NFT and how you will generate money for your service, how you yourself will generate money. And starting from that point, you should evaluate whether you need some licensing and registration.
But at the present is not required because we are just only MVP model and there is no revenue.
Yeah. And also I didn't mention, but also in some of the jurisdictions, it's very good when sometimes, because you young people come up with the ideas that legislators even cannot imagine. And that's why usually you start doing something and these regulations will follow later.
Yeah.
I always think that you new generation, you are faster than even the most fastest Chinese trains. Regulator cannot catch you anymore. So, and therefore, of course, sometimes in some jurisdictions where there is doubt, should they be licensed or not? Usually you can always ask, and they have these sandbox possibilities. When they say, okay, let's start doing what you want to do, we will see how it goes. Maybe you need to be regulated, maybe not, But at the same time, also, if there's no specific rules in place, so you are not, at least you know that you are not violating something.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Any other question?
Yeah, Baiba. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for tremendously deep and interesting information. That was a pleasure to listen and to catch all the ideas. Just one question, actually. We are considering as a market of whole world, decentralized finance, and for our projects, the DeFi projects, the whole market is a whole world. Actually.
Yeah, because there's no borders. Yeah.
My question is, why should we at all need to consider any legislative areas to set up our companies? In case of DAO, we can, organize ourselves like, administrative forces, some management, some CEOs, and all of this pyramid you shown. We can organize it on a decentralized way and apply it in a decentralized world and use as a legislative boundaries the Web3, the decentralized web. So the main question, why should we at all be considering, at least from the beginning, considering the regulation and establishing and set up in some jurisdictions? Thank you.
Yeah, the question is not, the question is very good, and to answer it's not so easy, and it takes like a few of the concepts. Each country has sovereignty. Let's take Germany. Germany has sovereignty, and Germany from the constitution has promised to the German citizens, we will protect you, we will guarantee financial stability, we will guarantee if the bank will be insolvent, you will have minimum guaranteed money. I'm just saying, they guarantee if you are German consumer, we will protect against to this professional business person, because we know you individual not so smart as he is a businessman. So we have in each of the country there's specific rules in place to protect weakest market participant, like consumer law. There is a banking law, there's financial stability law. And of course, so with the development and maturity of the blockchain ecosystem, we've seen that there's also quite many occasions when doing business, people suffered dramatic losses. They lost money, maybe they invested wrongly, or they felt in some scammer schemes or whatever. There's a lot of reasons why people lost money and why somebody has to be responsible. And this time, of course, everything what relates as from the point of view regulators in the country, everything what relates to digital asset is a high risk because of volatility. It's a high risk business still. And therefore, many countries even decided, saying if you enter, so there's no physical borders for services in decentralized, but there's the legal borders. Legal borders because some of the countries decided to protect their people, that they will tell, for example, France, last week they issued a new law. Every platform who wants to promote and offer services to French people in a French websites and whatever, promote and do something, they have to be registered. They have to register. It's not licensing, but you have to register. If you want to approach, if you want to onboard, French people, whatever, so you have to be registered. In some countries, there is no requirement, but in some they are. In some they're saying, if you want to do these particular services, therefore I told, there is a definition, what is this virtual service asset provider? If some of your activity falls under this definition, then you have to look in which countries there are specific requirements. It's nothing to do with the technological possibility to be decentralized, to be spread over the world. It depends on each country, how country decided to protect their people. Like Spain is saying, you cannot make any advertising of any blockchain project if it will be reaching more than 100,000 people. If you will not submit your advertising or your campaign description to the advertising authorities, that they check, they prove it's not too aggressive, it's not false. In Singapore, advertising of the digital asset project is forbidden at all. Singapore saying, yes, you can do it, you can be licensed, but you cannot market, because still for people, it is something too risky. Many people do not understand. If they find you, they can do, but you cannot promote. This is this rationale, but you have to take into account. And what relates to DAO registration, yes, you can do it yourself. You agree with your community. There's a smart contract, how you manage, how you pass decisions in your community. Either it's a member governed or algorithmically governed. There's two options, actually, only two, not more. But again, there are situations, for example, you have your DAO. You need to understand, we want to have some kind of promotion or something. We want to go to Latin America and to promote something, about our product. Before that, you need to receive legal opinion. Can you do or not? So DAO, if it's not organized, you cannot sign agreement with a lawyer, because but DAO is nothing, so. And sometimes that's why I mentioned, for example, that in United States, Wyoming state adopted, and they said, you can register DAO as a limited liability company. And when you register, you have to submit smart contract to the register. And what it gives, if the DAO has this also legal structure entity, you can sign agreements, you can sign agreements, you can have operational costs, you can sign agreement, you can rent the office. You know, there's a company, you can rent office, you can employ people, bookkeeper, for example, accountant, CTO. You can sign contract with a lawyer to get a legal opinion. You know, it becomes like something, there's some good things as well, you know, what you can do. That's why but we will see with every step, I would say, even in this year and next year, the more regulations will come also, but relates to DAOs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not short, but it's
yeah, thanks. Thank you. Interesting, but it sounds like utopia, you know, just to meet all the regulatory requirements around the world for decentralized. And if we as a, you know, as a founders would like to see the market of whole world, and right now we get an answer from you that it's impossible. As so far
it's
I can see,
you know, so
yeah.
maybe that I'm saying, like in this international organization UNIDROIT, where we have 69 members, at least, you know, right now we will come up with a agreement, you know, that all countries will follow these principles. At least we will know that it's not completely in this country, this and this, that it will be common agreements that we will follow the common principles. And it's very important for the legal certainty, because that's what you say today, to understand in Bangladesh, I need this, in Germany, this, in Italy, this, and you go crazy. What we do, and once we get some regulators letter saying you are not compliant, then we react.
Okay, so that's probably wiseful to create self-regulated organization. I mean, worldwide, which could be like, you know, the legislator of the not last but the first resort, and you know, sprawl the standards from for the governments. Okay, thank you, interesting.
You're welcome.
Amazing.
So yes, unfortunately, I have to close and run. So I will share, organizers will share my presentation. There's also my email. If something is needed, you know, of course, you know, I'm happy to assist and answer some other questions. And yes, and I wish you all the success and luck, you know, and join this beautiful ecosystem future.
Thank you. Thank you, Baiba. Like, it was really powerful and insightful. Thanks for dedicating your time and like helping us gain all these valuable insight into the regulatory and the compliance and the corporate structuring part. Thanks a lot, Baiba. Thanks a lot.
Yes, you're welcome. All the success.
Thank you very much.
Cool. For all the participants, like we'll be meeting again on Monday with a new session, right? And please join the group, the Telegram group, which I think we have shared with you on the email. And I did drop the link there in the chat yesterday, right? So please join the group. We'll be sharing all the information regarding the session and the schedule here in the group. So I think like it would be the best spot to be there to be updated regarding all the sessions and the mentors that we are calling in order to support you and like help you build your next crypto project.
Sorry, where can we find the link? Say it again.
I'll just drop it again in the chat. Please give me a minute. I have shared yesterday in the email also, but yeah, I'll again drop it into here.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Tomorrow, there is no session tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, we'll be meeting on Monday.
Okay.
So like, there was a session planned, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, the mentor won't be able to join tomorrow. So we'll be meeting on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I have dropped the link in the chat. Please find it. Cool. Thank you guys. Thank you for your time. And yeah, let's regroup there on Monday. Thank you.